So what is blended selling? Blended selling is the next generation of professional selling, but what is it really? The easiest way to understand it is to compare it with blended learning. You're already familiar with blended learning, whether you recognize the terminology or not, because professional and corporate trainers are using blended learning. Trainers like me, this is what we do for a living. Corporation trainers are finding more and more uses for blended learning. And in fact, most educational institutions are using blended learning now, and we'll look at that in just a moment. And they're using it because it provides multiple options for the learner. It gives the learner access, so the learner can decide how they want to learn. Now notice, this is not blended teaching, this is blended learning. And also the student can decide what they want to learn and when they want to learn it. If we compare blended selling with blended learning, here's what we see. First of all, professional and corporate sales professionals are using blended learning. A corporate salesperson or a professional sales professional, like an independent rep or a rep working for an independent firm, they are using this more and more. Instead of education, the chief sales officers now are finding a lot of benefits from using blended learning. It increases revenue, it takes less time, it allows them more options. So there are the multiple options for everyone, and it gives everyone access. It's how the customer wants to buy, how the customer wants to shop or buy. And then what do they want to buy? And when do they want to buy? So comparing blended selling to blended learning, there's a lot of parallels, and in fact blended learning is what birthed blended selling. When we look at blended learning, we have some options. There's the classroom. That's the traditional way of learning. That's what you and I have spent most of our time doing in a learning environment. It's visual. The instructor can show things. It's verbal. It can be interactive, and it's the primary learning method for boomers. There's e-learning. E-learning is measurable, so we know when someone has taken a course and when they haven't. It's visual, it's verbal, however, it's not interactive. But the learner can take their training anytime and from anywhere. It's very popular with millennials, and in fact, millennials are more comfortable with e-learning than they are with traditional classroom learning. Video learning has been around for a long time. It's visual, it's verbal, it's anytime, it's anywhere, and pretty much everyone in your corporate organization and even the independents are taking advantage of video learning. YouTube is a classic example. And then there's audio learning, like audiobooks. It's verbal, there is no visual, but it's also available anytime, anywhere, and many boomers and Gen Xers prefer to get their information verbally using audio than going with video. The up-and-comer, however, is DIY, do-it-yourself, in-house training. It's more comprehensive. It's visual, it's verbal, it's interactive, anytime, anywhere. And the difference in DIY in-house training is that someone on the team facilitates the training using materials that were gathered off of the web or a book or some other material, but typically something off of the web. The most effective training process is also the most common, and it's what you're probably most familiar with. We begin learning the content in a classroom environment, which is the traditional way of learning. It's visual, it's verbal, it's interactive. The instructor can ask questions, the learners can ask questions, and a lot of information can be exchanged. This is very similar to a face-to-face sales call, isn't it? And then, immediately following the classroom training in a learning environment would be an audio track where the learner can review the content again. We don't pick up everything in a classroom session. While we're writing, we might miss something. While we're thinking about what the instructor said, we might miss what they say next. And so having the audio track available is very important. After the audio, we go to video tracks. as a refresher. So not only do they have the audio, they also have the video to help them remember the information. Then in order to advance their training, we have the e-learning available. It's online. It's available for new hires. E-learning systems today are measurable. You know who took the training and how well they did. It's visual, it's verbal, it's anytime and anywhere. So when we're using media like audio, video, and e-learning, it's available anytime, anywhere. And the big one now is ongoing education. Education is not an event, it's an ongoing process, it's lifelong learning. And the most popular one now, the fastest growing one now, is DIY, do-it-yourself, in-house training. And this is where one of your employees facilitates the training that is available on the internet, in a book, in a binder somewhere. You provide everyone with the content and then let your in-house people facilitate the training. It becomes incredibly comprehensive. And of course, it's visual, it's verbal, it's interactive, and it's also available anytime and anywhere. So now let's compare blended selling and traditional selling. In the traditional selling process, marketing generates interest in the mind of the customer or prospect. Once the customer or prospect responds to the marketing effort, sales gets involved. And once sales is involved and closes the sale, then the relationship typically goes to the service level people who either grow the account, maintain the account, and keep it going. And then there should be something on the other end, but is there? Sometimes there's something there and sometimes there isn't. When we look at blended selling and how it compares, we still begin with marketing. However, the marketing focus is to be where the customer is shopping, not where the customer is buying, but where the customer is shopping. There's an interim step now between marketing and sales, and that's shopping. Even when your marketing department generates interest, the customer is ready to buy, they are still likely to go shopping to see how many different options they have and make sure they're making the right decision. Sales is the initial contact. Should it be face-to-face, or should it be email, or should it be something else? In blended selling, it's typically automated. And even though it's automated, it can still be unique. And it's automated and unique and quite often includes media. So when we're looking at how we're going to have that initial touch with the customer, it's no longer always a phone call or always an email. There may be multiple ways of touching the customer that don't involve the time and effort of the salespeople. And when we look at customer service now, this is not about fighting fires, it's about retention and growth. It's not just helping the customer place orders or solving issues. It's all about growing the account. More and more of the sales responsibility is going to the service department. And then we look at the now what. What else could you do to help your customer? Is there a new product offering in the relationship with the customer? If you offer A and B and the customer asks you for C, could you do that as well? So the whole selling process is changing with blended selling. When we look at the blended selling options, the first one, of course, we'll look at is face-to-face, because we all understand face-to-face selling. That's the traditional way of selling. It's visual, it's verbal, it's interactive, and boomers prefer it in most cases. It is expensive. It takes time. It takes prep time. It takes travel time. There's a lot involved in a face-to-face presentation. What if the customer could be convinced to buy without a face-to-face presentation? And then there's web-based. Your company probably has this. Options on your website, configurators, features and benefits, information. It's visual and it can be verbal with videos and audios also on your website. It's available anytime, anywhere. Your millennial customers, and there's going to be more and more of them, as well as your Gen X customers, may prefer to work late at night instead of early in the morning, where the boomers might want to come in before you come to work. So have your information on the web. And then there's email dialogue. Again, it's visual, but it can include media, which would also make it visual as well and verbal as well. It's anytime, anywhere. The customer can review it whenever they want to. Pretty much everyone likes to use email dialogue, email communications. And then there's multimedia. We're all familiar now with multimedia presentations. They are best when they are interactive, when the customer can control the dialogue, when the customer can stop, rewind, go back and forth, perhaps make changes or pick options. It needs to be customer directed. When you're doing a face-to-face PowerPoint, let the customer drive the PowerPoint. It's verbal, obviously, can be visual, again, available anytime, anywhere, and almost everyone appreciates those. A package presentation is a hybrid presentation. The customer responds to our marketing efforts. We have maybe a web-based or an email contact, and then we send them a package. The package can be as comprehensive as you like. It can have a product sample, of course, but if it does, it should also have an explanation of your features and benefits and how those relate to the solution to the problem the customer has already given you. This is not a generic package, not something you just pull off the shelf. Whenever possible, have a cost justification in the package as well. Major opportunities need to be addressed with a package. You can put media in there. Thumb drives, even CDs. People still watch CDs. Or give them a link to a specific place on your server where they can get more information that relates directly to them. The blended selling process is typically most effective when we begin with a web-based contact. It doesn't involve the salesperson's time, it doesn't involve their energy, and it is visual and verbal. It's available anytime, anywhere. As soon as the customer has responded, it's best to make some kind of an email contact immediately. Even if it's automated, make the email contact immediately, which means, of course, you'll want to trap their name and email address when they are visiting your web media. Once you've contacted them and dialogued with them using email, you will know if it's best for you to use multimedia or a package presentation to move the sale forward. Use face-to-face only when warranted. If you cannot close the sale using the other disciplines and the sale is significant enough and it'll still be profitable, then consider the face-to-face. Blended selling is already here. It's the next generation of professional selling, and many companies are already using it. You will need to build it because it takes a while to build. You will need a library or a gallery of multimedia tools. You will need some videos, audios, and some other interactive tools that you can use for your customers. But understand that as you implement blended selling, your salespeople will become more productive. You'll be able to touch more customers. Sales will typically happen faster, and there'll be less discounting. Blended selling is here. Many companies are using it. Is your customer one of those companies?